Welcome to The Ladder, a weekly dose of personal development ideas to help spark your imagination, increase your leadership skills, and bring more success into your life. And now, here's your host, James Theros.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of the Ladder Podcast. I'm your host, James Theros, and we are going to be talking about a very important subject today, and I'm going to dive right in, but I'm going to do it by telling you a little bit of a story first. So the story kind of goes like this. There were once these two twin boys of about maybe 5 or 6 years old, and worried that the boys had developed extreme personalities. One was kind of a pessimist, and the other was like a very much of an optimist. Their parents took them to a psychiatrist, and first the psychiatrist treated the pessimist, and he tried to brighten his outlook. So the psychiatrist took him to a room piled to the ceiling with brand new toys. But instead of yelping with delight, the little boy kind of burst into tears. And the psychiatrist said, "What's the matter?" He said, "Don't you want to play with any of these toys?" And the little boy said, "Yes, but if I did, I'd only break them." And then the psychiatrist treated the optimist, and he tried to dampen his outlook by taking him into a room piled to the ceiling with horse manure. But instead of wrinkling his nose in disgust, the optimist emitted just the yelp of delight that the psychiatrist had been hoping to hear from his brother, the pessimist. Then he clambered to the top of the pile, dropped to his knees, and began gleefully digging out scoop after scoop with his bare hands. And the psychiatrist said, "What on earth are you doing?" Just as baffled by the optimist as he had been by the pessimist. And the little boy said, "Well, with all this manure, there must be a pony in here somewhere." And that's really what it comes down to. So the topic we're talking about today is, are you a pessimist or an optimist? Or another way of saying it for a person of working on leadership skills is how positive of a person you are. So that really can determine your longevity as a leader. People may follow somebody who's occasionally positive and mostly has sarcastic or even a negative outlook on things. And there's some humor in that, and I find myself to be that way once in a while as well. But people won't follow somebody who's like that all the time. It's okay to slip into those roles occasionally, but I really encourage you to focus on working on becoming a much more positive person. And maybe since this is January 15th and we're still fresh into the new year, you might be able to set that as one of your goals if you don't consider yourself as positive a person as you could be. And I know there was a period of time in my life where I didn't feel like I was as positive as I could be. And I set the goal to change that. And so that's one of the reasons why, I read the types of books that I read and listen to the types of audio and follow the types of people that I do, because I need to have that constant dose of positive reinforcement in my own life. The only way I'm going to be able to lead anybody is through positivity. I have to look for the good. I have to be a good finder. And that's going to be the subject probably of one of our future podcasts as well. But that's something we could go into on a whole different rant and spend the entire time talking about that. So today I wanted to kind of keep things positive, and I wanted to give you a very close personal example. In fact, I'm going to have several new personal examples coming up in the next 12 to 24 to 36 months. But I'm going to tell you a story about a situation that occurred to me. I believe the year was 2003 approximately. I had opened my martial arts school and been in 1995 and had been open for several years. So that would have been about 13 years into, no, is that right? Yeah, I think that's about right. About 13 years into owning a school. And I had moved several times, and I could really go back over the course of the time of when I very first opened even and pull out examples as well. But one of them really sticks in the back of my mind like nothing else. And that is back in the October of 2002 is actually when it occurred. And so we had just expanded our school into a new space next door to us. So the original school, the space was, I want to say it was about 3,000 square feet. Maybe it was 3,500 square feet. And by taking on this additional 1,500 square feet, I believe that gave us 5,000 square feet, so I believe that's accurate. And I decided we were going to open a second classroom. So I got all of my ducks in a line and in order, and I went ahead and signed the lease on this new spacing, but it was going to require a pretty extensive build out to really work well for us. And plus we broke a hole from one wall to the other wall and put a very, very nice, expensive sliding glass door between the two spaces so that we could run special events in that other room, and we could run an extra class in that room or use it for overflow and other types of things. And it was about expanding our operation and allowing more people to enjoy what we did. Well, about 3 days into the build-out process, something happened unexpectedly, and that was a tornado. A massive tornado hit the area that we were located in, and it actually demolished the entire shopping plaza that we were located in. So at the moment I was thinking, oh my goodness, my life is over. What am I going to do? You see, I had just canceled my insurance policy on the business so that I could afford to take the money that I was going to pay for the insurance policy and put it towards this build out to get this other side up and running. And I guess it was about 3 days after we finished the build out when this happened. So we got the build out finished. Everybody was very excited about it. And then this tornado hit while my wife and I were out doing a program or a presentation at one of the local elementary schools. And as we got back, we got closer and closer, and we could see the devastation. When we got back to our school, that was pretty much ground zero for where this tornado hit the hardest. And we didn't recognize anything. And I thought for a few moments, I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? I have no insurance. I have no other source of income. This is my livelihood. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I was in that frame of mind. I was a very negative, scared frame of mind for about 90 minutes. And I took my wife out and we had lunch and discussed it. And I said, you know what? This is an opportunity for me to teach my students about perseverance and about when I was talked to people about it's not what happens to us, but it's how we deal with what happens to us. Well, now here was a perfect opportunity for me to showcase this to my students instead of just talking about it, actually doing something. One of the things that I learned very on was that actions speak much louder than words. And so this was an opportunity for me to demonstrate to my students perseverance and stick-to-itiveness and dedication and determination and all these things that we talk about in the martial arts on a regular basis. But here was a perfect example in my own life of something that I could demonstrate this with to my students. And so my wife and I kept a very positive attitude when the students were there. Now, when the students weren't there, oh my goodness, I still cried into my hands several times. And I know that my wife was still fearful. That was her full-time job as well. And we didn't really know what was going to happen. But we decided if we were going to really become leaders in our community and really demonstrate leadership to our students, that we were going to rebound from this bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. And one of the best things that happened out of that situation, we were able to last 6 months in this little tiny 1,500 square foot facility now that we had just acquired. The other 3,000 or 3,500 square feet was unusable. The roof had been torn off, and what are those called? The big heater and air conditioning units had tumbled off of the roof and into the street. So we had zero air conditioning, no lighting. And all we had in this other little room was empty space. It had been spared. And so what we did was we ran a generator. We ran 2 generators. One for forced air, hot air, with a kerosene heater in the back. And the other, the actual generator for power, we used to power lights. And we did this for 6 months until the builders came in and cleaned everything out and rebuilt it all up. And we ended up with a bigger and better school, and a much nicer space. The entire plaza was rebuilt than we had before. And right out in front of our plaza was this really old, rundown car wash that had been abandoned probably 10 years prior to us coming into this plaza. And we kept looking at it and thinking, man, I wish someday that somebody would tear that thing down or rebuild something. And fortunately for us, Mother Nature came in and tore that thing completely down. So when the plaza was rebuilt, we ended up with getting rid of that eyesore out in front of our plaza, and we ended up with a much healthier looking school inside and out. And then we did lose some students during that time, but we actually maintained 95 active students for those 6 months. But when the school was rebuilt and we had those 2 rooms running, we were able to move our student body from 95 to 200 and something, 205 or 210 students as a result of that tornado. So at the time, it seemed like a very negative thing, and it was a very scary situation. But we kept a positive attitude during that time, and we really rallied behind that concept of leading by example, leading from the front, and staying positive and not talking about it in a negative light. And so that's what this podcast is about today. I want you to really think about how positive are you as a leader to the people that you lead. Now, if you don't own a business, or you're not a supervisor or a manager or something like that, or a teacher somewhere, that's perfectly fine, because you probably have somebody that you lead in your life. If you're a parent, you're leading your family. You're leading your children. You're leading your spouse, possibly. You are leading your community with the neighbors' kids and things like this. They're all watching you, just as everybody's watching me and my wife, and I'm watching other people to see if somebody's worthy of following. And one of the prerequisites for me to follow somebody is I have to see somebody that has a good sense of humor and can take a joke and make fun of themselves, and also they can take a hit and come back again. They can take a hit, get up again, and get moving in the right direction again. And that's what it takes to have a positive mindset. So as I mentioned toward the beginning, it's not what happens to us. It's about how we deal with what happens to us. So with those 2 children in the story that I told you in the beginning, the one was very much a pessimist, and he was given all these toys, and he didn't want to play with them because he was afraid that he might break them, so he couldn't enjoy them. Where the other kid, the optimist, he was put in the room with the horse manure, and instead of getting upset about the horse manure, he dug down thinking that, my goodness, there must be a horse in here somewhere, which that really illustrates the concept I'm talking about today. And so that's my message for you today. I hope you will work on becoming a more positive person. Now, how do you do this? How do you become a more positive person? Well, the first thing is you get around more positive people. If you're hanging out with people who are negative by nature, spend less time with them. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is get yourself some books on positive thinking. One of them is called The Power of Positive Thinking. I believe that might be from Reverend Robert Schuller. I'm not sure if that's the right one or not. There's several books that have that name, but there's one that's called The Power of Positive Thinking. And in fact, I'm going to Google them right now, Positive Thinking books. And let's see what the old Google comes up with. The Power of Positive Thinking is number 1. The Secret is number 2. Now, just understand that you've got to do more than just think about it in order to get things. But that is a good starting point. Another one of my favorites, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Those are top of the 3 of the top 3 there that come up. And one of my other favorites is called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now I have to know. It's Norman Vincent Peale. That's who it is. The Power of Positive Thinking is Norman Vincent Peale. So those are some 3 great books that you can start with, or 4 great books actually that you can start with to help develop a more positive outlook on life and a more positive mindset, which will help attract more people to you. People like to be around other people who have a positive mindset, and it's up to us to provide that for them. So that's what I've got for you this week. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about this week, and if you have any comments or you disagree with anything I said, please post those in the comments below, and let's start a discussion about this. So until next week, this is James Theras saying, be positive.